going to yield myself here 5 minutes for questions. The first one is to you, Mr. Gerstenmaier. There are approximately 1,370 civil servants and 4,725 reportable contractors supporting the ISS program in FY18. Many are located in my district, Johnson Space Center in Houston. Yesterday, you were asked in the Senate testimony how mission control at Johnson Space Center would be impacted by an ISS transition. You stated that NASA's intent is for mission control being conducted at Johnson Space Center for all future HEO programs, and that there would be no major impact. And I would like to ask you to elaborate on that for us as well in this hearing.
Yeah, what I was alluding to as we talk about the gateway activity around the moon, that vehicle that will be around the moon, that can be in multiple different orbits around the moon. It's not like a space station. It can be in different orbits. That will be commanded and operated from the Johnson Space Center through the mission control teams. Just as the Johnson Space Center played a critical role in understanding how we do rendezvous and proximity operations in low Earth orbit, they set all the operating procedures for how that would be developed, how we routinely keep crews healthy in low Earth orbit, and those activities. All those things will carry into deep space. So that fundamental research and analysis that needs to be done on how you use the gravity of the Earth and the Moon and the Sun to maneuver and manipulate around to save propellant, all that will be done by the scientists and researchers at the Johnson Space Center. So that that pioneering of how we get comfortable of keeping humans in deep space, how we learn to essentially maneuver and manipulate across the gravity rivers in space to other deep space locations, all that will be done by the teams at the Johnson Space Center.
Thank you very much. I think, Dr. Lal, first for you, NASA benefits from commercial partnerships and can help with a lot of early technical development, but are the medium to late stage economic development of space the responsibility of NASA, another part of the government, or not a government responsibility at all?
That's a good question. It depends on the particular area and the context of the space station. I think there's enough experience that this is a transition that can begin to happen. There are companies that have whose leadership has been part of NASA, has learned lessons from the station. NASA is willing to offer expertise through Space Act agreements and other ways. So this would be an area where there's potentially little enough R&D that it could be outside of the government. And of course, we're talking about operating the platform. There's also the launch service where we've seen that the commercial sector can do a pretty good job. And on the user base, again, NASA is working on developing R&D, users of R&D in commercial areas or even universities where things can move forward without government support.
Okay, thank you. And then this is for all of you, should the United States commit to maintaining a human presence, commit to it, whether public, private, whether permanent or periodic in low Earth orbit? Mr. Gerstenmaier, you first.
I think there's
yes or no?
I think there's a need for us to stay in low Earth orbit as we go beyond low Earth orbit. So again, I think as you described fairly clearly at the beginning, it's not an either-or situation. I think we need to do both, and we need to figure out a way to accomplish both.
Okay. Well, let me follow up with you while you've got the mic. If the United States doesn't maintain a presence in light of Chinese plans for a LEO space station as early as 2022, are we ceding U.S. leadership?
Again, I think we can still maintain leadership in the deep space activities. There would be some potential damage if we relied on another entity for operations in low Earth orbit.
Okay. And then I'll tell you what, I'll go to Dr. Cantwell next, and then if I have time, Dr. Lal. Should the United States commit to maintaining a human presence, whether public, private, permanent, periodic, in low Earth orbit? Dr. Cantwell, very quickly.
I think the opinion of my community and my personal opinion is yes. And the reason is that it is the most accessible location with which to do research of interest, and it is the least expensive.
Okay.
So we can get answers to our questions and discover new things faster if we have LEO presence.
Thank you. Dr. Long.
Robert Heinlein said low Earth orbit is halfway to anywhere. I agree with him. We absolutely need to have low Earth orbit presence. It doesn't have to be government-led. We need it for R&D on Earth. We need it to R&D for the future, and we need it to be as a gateway to the rest of the solar system.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. And that exhausts my time, so